Thank you. So I will now switch to a little bit different side of air pollution effects on health. And I really appreciate the two earlier talks, and I'll try to tie my talk a little bit into that. But I will speak on a little bit different matter and how do you translate the scientific findings on air pollution health effects into policy decisions. And I will talk specifically about experience from European Respiratory Society, where I have been working as a chair of Environment and Health Committee. And I'll quickly introduce you to the European Respiratory Society and this committee and what do we work on. European Respiratory Society is globally largest society of over 35,000 clinicians, scientists, and allied health professionals working on lung health from all over the world. More than 160 countries, the members are part of this society. And one of the important roles of the society is its advocacy on lung health, and one of the very important aspects here is environment and health, where ERS has been, I would say, the globally leading advocate for clean air policies as of crucial importance for lung health. And hereby we have been working in Environment and Health Committee clearly to bring forward evidence on health impacts on air pollution on lung health to policymakers, mainly in EU in this talk, but this is also applied globally in collaboration with WHO and other partners in this work. So Environment and Health Committee, this is just a list of people that have been members while I was chairing Environment and Health Committee, and a number of clinical experts as well as representatives for European Lung Foundation, patient experts, as well as experts in policy such as Brian Ward and his office from ERS in Brussels. So the whole story of this talk is about air quality legislation in Europe, and perhaps some of you know, some not, that EU law on air pollution, it's called Ambient Air Quality Directive, has been up for revision in 2021, and now, the end of story is good. We have now revised air pollution, a more strict air pollution law in Europe. And this whole thing started in 2021 with WHO releasing their updated air quality guidelines. So EU uses WHO massive summary of health effects of air pollution, which are summarized in these guidelines, as a summary of evidence that guides EU policy on air pollution. So the whole EU apparatus under vision of EU law, Ambient Air Quality Guideline, started in 21 when WHO released their air quality guideline. And here just a little map of the complex revision of the EU law, and I'm not going to go in detail, but I'll show you a little bit how we worked around this and we're ready. So we knew that these WHO new air quality guidelines will come, and they were released in 21. And we have, as European Respiratory Society, organized a webinar on the day of the release of this report on 22nd of September, and right away tackled to interpret what are the main messages, what are the steps forward, and what do we advise EU policy to do around this WHO guideline. So the WHO guideline, and we have summarized our main points with a webinar. Along with webinar, we had a editorial ready where we stated our position, which was clean, short and brief, clean air for healthy lungs, urgent call for action. So we pretty much aligned. We pretty much said that whatever WHO air quality guideline advised, based on knowledge, on evidence, on health effects of air pollution, that should guide the policy. Just implement the advice from the science directly to the policy. It's very clear and clean. And just to show you quickly in this graph that all WHO air quality guidelines had, according to science at 2005, made recommendations to legal limit values for a number of pollutants, PM2.5, 10 NO2, and let's focus on PM2.5. And at that time, they said that everything above 10 micrograms of cubic meter was dangerous for health. Therefore, the regulation should go all down to 10 around the globe. Now, in 2021, according to massive new evidence on health effects of air pollution, this was halved down to 5. So everything above 5, now with much more certainty, we know that everything about 5 micrograms per cubic meter is dangerous for our health. That's why we think only logical is that regulation of air pollution recommends that we cut air pollution down to 5, and so on for a number of other pollutants. So this is historically low guidelines for air pollution, according to very good evidence on air pollution that we know. So we clearly called for alignment. Let's the new laws listen to science and align them completely to what WHO recommends. We have also gathered in ERS, we are of course leading a respiratory medical association, but we of course gathered many other medical communities around the world, European Society of Cardiology, cancer associations, so on. And as we know, health effects of air pollution go way beyond lung. And we heard just on wildfires how much evidence we have on the heart and dementia now and brain and so on. So we also made this historical endorsement of over 140 societies that joined our message, which was implement WHO guidelines to new EU policy on air pollution. We have also helped communicate some other large projects results directly to EU policymakers, and this was just to mention a large HEI Health Effects Institute funded projects on health effects from low exposure to air pollution. This was a large project with results from Canada, US and Europe, showing that even at quite low levels that we have now, with recent reductions in air pollution in the last decades, we still have significant health impacts. And that was really a very important argument to go even lower than what we have as the current standards in EU, as well as in US and Canada and beyond. We also brought our clean messages to very important political meetings, which is EU Clean Air Forum, is a meeting that happens every 2 years. And in 21, which was just when the WHO guidelines were published and the revision of the EU law started, we were there to show these clear messages. And just to show you how short and clear messages has to be, we just had 2 minutes to present 3 points on what we recommend. And one was, of course, this very important point that there are no safe levels of air pollution. Everybody is exposed with this new limit guideline of 5 micrograms per cubic meter. This literally means that everybody around the world, 99% of population, is exposed to dangerous air pollution levels, and this is really unacceptable to us. So that was the first main message, that we are all exposed to dangerous levels of air pollution still, even there where it's quite low in Northern and Western Europe. Health burden is still huge and unacceptable. We brought up some disturbing numbers, how many people still die of air pollution and get sick from air pollution. And then this very important argument that a guideline implementation is really a historic opportunity for public and planetary health, that air pollution policy is really a health policy that would bring important improvements in health, as well as, and this is an important other point, mitigate climate change crisis. So we brought forward throughout our communication on air pollution health effects, evidence that we have very important parallels with climate change crisis, and the same air pollution reduction would bring major mitigation of climate change, which is a very important point. We have also directly communicated with European Commission throughout the revision process. We engaged with them when they made their cost-benefit analysis on reduction of air pollution policies, cost of them versus benefits. I'm not going to go in detail, but there were very specific recommendations of what were the best estimates to use in that calculations, where we felt they used some older and smaller estimates that would underestimate this cost-benefit ratio. We brought forward newest evidence and newest studies, and also documented every step in publications that European Commission and EU could lean on and use in their calculations. We also reacted at every chain of the political process. For example, when the EU Commission proposed new EU limit values, which were 20 for PM2.5, sorry, PM10 and 10 for PM2.5, we expressed that we weren't completely satisfied because we called for full implementation, which would be 5. So this was, of course, better than what current EU levels were, limits were. And just to remind you, in EU limit values were 25, so way above the WHO recommendations. So new proposal was to go significantly down to 10, but still not fully aligned with WHO guidelines. So our message was clear throughout. If it's not going way down to guideline set by WHO according to health evidence, that is not ambitious enough for us. We have, again, number of communications together with our partner societies, International Society of Environmental Epidemiology and others, made a number of reactions to this revision process, always calling for most ambitious options for health. There was also a number of meetings with MEPs and commissioners, and every opportunity we had together with other health and environmental NGOs to show up at the meetings, to take those 5 minutes to commissioners or show up at important meetings. Of course, we made sure we were there, and also a number of smaller and bigger meetings with MEPs in EU Parliament. We took opportunity to talk about newest evidence on health effects of air pollution. There were also a number of public hearings on proposal for a new law that we took part of. And we also were proactive in by our self-organizing meetings where we could set agenda. And for example, at this meeting in 2023, in May, we have organized a large meeting, but we brought forward the newest evidence of health effects of air pollution on a number of outcomes beyond lung, also on heart and brain and cancer and so on, and invited some key stakeholders, both from patient organizations, from EU as well as US, EPA, and so on, to discuss the ongoing revision process, and again, calling for most ambitious actions and how do we get there. Another important chain of communication of health effects of air pollution to get to policymakers for us is communicating these to our members. This is clinicians, probably, and patients working with respiratory diseases. So perhaps these are the most important stakeholders. These are people suffering from health effects of air pollution exposure. And one important instrument we have here is annual conference of European Respiratory Society, where around 20,000 people attend in person and even more online, is of course such a forum. And regularly we have a number of sessions at ERS conferences every year to bring newest evidence on air pollution health effects. So educating clinicians, which is a chain, important chain to educating public and pushing for pressure with politicians locally in member countries, in the cities, in even smaller communities, as well as educating patients. And this is very important, because even if we communicate everything to policy makers, but there is no significant support with the public and no knowledge among clinicians and patients on these issues, that we're not going to be effective in putting the pressures to clinicians. So this is a very important chain to getting to policymakers, as well as it's extremely important for us that clinicians get the latest evidence on air pollution effects, and they can communicate this and use in their clinic to inform their patients and to be able to mitigate some of their health effects and improve their patients' health. So the proposal, one of the very important milestones was the vote by European Parliament to adopt the new revised air quality law, and that was voted. So one of the big victories for us was this September 13th vote that Parliament passed the new proposal. And after Council and additional negotiations, we now do have the new revised EU Ambient Air Quality Directive. This one was entered into force at the end of 2024, and now EU member countries have until another year to transpose these into national laws, and they're required to meet these updated standards by 2030. So there's still some years to implement actions to get there. So generally, this is a victory. We did not go all the way down to guidelines and not as ambitious as we hoped for, but still big improvement if you compare the new limit values to old ones towards the cleaner air in Europe. And of course, this is a globally resonating victory that hopefully will push other continents, other countries to dare to go towards cleaner air pollution regulation. So to summarize, how do we translate knowledge into policy effectively? Of course, direct translation to policymakers is extremely important. We have to bring new evidence and have to continuously keep new evidence as we get new evidence on air pollution health effects continuously, and with new challenging issues, as we've heard today, brought by climate change. This is extremely important. We need simple and clear messages on the major threats, and we also need to stress co-benefits of air pollution action or climate change, because this is really important synergy, and health has to be at the center of this argument. It's very important to build alliances and partnerships with environmental NGOs that have understanding of political process and when to meet which politicians and so on, but as well as with other patient organizations, other medical societies, because of joint voice on health is much more strong than separating lungs and heart and other stakeholders, as well as drawing in each other expertise and coordinate messages will be more powerful. Indirect impact of policy is building awareness among voters, and here, as I mentioned, empowering public, empowering healthcare professionals, clinicians working with patients, as well as empowering patients. This is also extremely important through our conferences, through our mainstream media and other formats, next to just speaking directly to politicians. And to wrap up, of course, even with new air pollution limit values in Europe, we have new challenges to face, and this is, of course, mainly due to unprecedented climate change-driven changes and the new sources such as wildfires, others that we haven't talked much yet, dust storms, interactions of higher air pollution levels with heat. We have now new evidence that there is a really even more adverse effects when it's very hot and you have high air pollution levels in the cities or due to wildfires. And another more complex stressors such as our allergen mixes with heat and pollution and drought and dust and so on. So we need this urgent evidence to come quickly as we have these huge changes and very much disturbing projections in increase in heat as well as wildfires in coming years. And we need to give those quickly to policymakers as well as medical patient communities to bring this knowledge and mitigate health effects on their patients. And with this, I'll finish and open up for questions, I guess.